Hello and welcome to the Silver Maple Forest Alewife Reservation panel discussion. My name is Jack Kelly. Several individuals are here today to discuss a major housing development project planned for the Silver Maple Forest in Belmont. And they as well will discuss issues and concerns related to that. First, I will ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves, and then we will begin our discussion.
My name is Edith Haber, and I'm co-chair of the Coalition to Preserve the Belmont Uplands.
My name is Ellen Mass, and I am co-chair of the coalition as well as the president of Friends of the Alewife Reservation.
My name is Stephanie Liu. I'm a longtime member of the coalition. It's a volunteer-only coalition.
My name is Quentin Zondervan, a member of the coalition and president of Green Cambridge.
Okay. First, I would ask Ellen Mass to briefly describe the area in Belmont that we're talking about. Ellen?
Well, the Silver Maple Forest Alewife Reservation is west of Cambridge, and it is the western corridor of the Boston area metropolitan. It's along Route 2 as one leaves Cambridge. It includes Belmont, Arlington, and Cambridge. It is the recipient of a great flow of stormwater from Belmont Hill. So both Arlington and Belmont Hill's water comes and is received by this area. The Silver Maple Forest is really over a 7-acre small river floodplain forest that acts as a sponge. It acts as a recipient of this water when Little Pond, for example, overflows as it did in March 2009. It also provides great rich habitat for the animals that are usually found in wild areas like fox, coyote, and mink and beaver and otter particularly. So this area is very, very special. It is a surrounding Little Pond in Belmont, which is in the Winbrook neighborhood. It also contains a river, Little River, that used to be called historic Menotomy River. And it is a very rare, large urban wild, maybe one of the largest in the Boston area.
Okay, thank you, Ellen. I'd like now to turn to Edith and ask her to talk a bit about the role of the coalition and issues associated with that.
The mission of the coalition is to preserve the Boston area's largest silver maple forest. Number one, to provide flood control for the Winbrook neighborhood, and number two, because it is the core habitat for the 120-acre Alewife Reservation. Without this forest, we would lose more than 50% of the remote wildlife habitat for the reservation.
Okay, and maybe you could elaborate a bit more on what basis are you making a court appeal in behalf of the Silver Maple Forest?
Well, it started with a administrative hearing at the Department of Environmental Protection, the DEP, where 4 days and 21 hours of testimony were held. But the decision of this presiding officer did not reflect a single minute of that. And in her decision, she actually said, I considered the pre-filed written testimony. And then to top it all off, did not provide us complete tapes to make transcripts of the hearings to provide to Superior Court. In addition, the DEP did not make findings of facts in their decision, and they made several errors of law.
Okay. Thank you. Stephanie, I'd like to ask you, what are your most important environmental points in this case from the hearings?
Actually, one of the major concerns I have is flood situation in Belmont and in my area. Actually, in 2010, I took pictures of the March rainstorm, and I would like to show you. I started taking picture on day 2, And this is what it was like in day 2. It covers about half of the backyard. And then day 3, it almost reaches our backyard. And day 4, as you can see, day 4, it actually reached my neighbor's backyard in the basement. Okay, and you can see that it takes a very long time. And this is day 5, day 7, okay, and day 8. It takes 8 days to actually have the flood water receding from the yard, but it takes more than that for all the neighbors to pump their basement for a very long time. I remember after the 10th day, and I was still hearing people pumping their basement.
And could you tell us, Stephanie, where exactly in Belmont you live, if you don't mind?
I live on Oliver Road, right off Little Pond.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Stephanie. Quentin, why is the Uplands so important to Belmont and its surrounding neighbors?
Well, one of the many reasons why it's important is that this region and the whole world is experiencing climate change. And in this region in particular, we expect that one of the effects of climate change is that we will receive more rainfall and more water to process. And so the kind of flooding that Stephanie experienced is actually going to become more frequent. And the more that we destroy this habitat that helps us absorb that water, the worse these flooding events will get over time. So it's very important that we preserve these areas that we already have in place as we think about how to adapt to the coming changes in our climate.
Thank you, Quentin. I would ask anybody on the panel to address this housing development that is going in the Silver Maple Forest. How would that increase the flooding? And has studies been done about that? And anyone is open to answer that.
Well, that brings us to the basis for the Belmont Conservation Commission's case, and also becoming involved in this lawsuit. And the development is supposed to replicate what the natural flood storage and control of the forest. It's supposed to, and the reason, and there's it's part of the Wetlands Protection Act. It's in the law, and these standards are there to ensure that the flood waters are cleaned by the earth before they go empty into the ocean, and also that, like Quentin said, you don't want the flood waters to come down too quickly and go into flood downstream. So the way that this development, according to the commission, which studied this very, very thoroughly and had experts testifying at the hearings, was that the developments, once development, water will run off too quickly from the development, and one of the developer's expert actually said, well, this water that runs off, it'll be off and gone before the storm comes. But that is not really true, given how slowly the water recedes from Little Pond. And then the second case, which the second point, which was actually sent back by the Superior Court judge to the DP, is that because of the high water table, the water it's supposed to infiltrate in the ground the same rate before and after, but it's actually going to exceed the amount that's trying to be sent back into the ground is actually going to be higher than before.
Because of this development?
Because of this development,
yes.
I
Ellen?
admitted it.
Thank you, Yadid.
This is the, it's a very important model, the Silver Maple Forest case, which is a case of litigation against the defendant, which is the development firm and also the partners. And the reason it's so important, not just for Belmont and for that region and how it functions as a sponge and a wildlife habitat, but for the whole region. The Federal Emergency Management Agency is very concerned about the entire area, and they have designated in 2010 that even the uplands or the Silver Maple Forest and the surrounding area is not only a 100-year floodplain, which has very strict environmental regulations, but it's also a floodway. And we're concerned that the whole region will be impacted if we take down the woodlands, which are a great climate and mitigation source for flooding, that this will affect all of Arlington downstream, East Arlington, Cambridge, Northwest Cambridge. So it really has implications that go way beyond this 15 acres.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
If I could follow up on that, Ellen. First, a floodway, I think I know what you mean by that, but can you define that a little more?
It's a place where the water actually flows. I mean, it's not just groundwater seeping up, it's also a floodway that actually gets a lot of surface water. Mm-hmm. And it means that anything going on there, there's a good chance that there will be a rise in water level, that the groundwater reaches a certain level, mm-hmm. that it's likely that they will, it'll be inundated at a rapid pace when you get heavy, heavy storms. So floodway is a federal designation, the strictest designation you can possibly get. And they're beginning to see that some of the other pending buildings out there are on a floodway.
Thanks, Ellen. It seems to me that if the federal government becomes involved in this, this would be another avenue for appeal or to prevent this development from happening. Is that a valid assumption on my part?
Well, can I answer that?
Sure.
One of the conditions of their comprehensive permit is to abide by local, regional, and federal regulations. Mm-hmm. So yes, I think that is another regulation they're going to have to likely look into.
Yeah, it is another avenue. Unfortunately, the FEMA makes recommendations about development, and in particular in a floodway, the recommendation is not to develop at all. However, they don't explicitly prohibit development, and so it's not actually going far enough yet, unfortunately.
What do you mean by it's not going far enough yet?
Well, ideally, they would actually prevent us or any municipality from actually developing in designated floodways because of the dangers of increased flooding.
Okay, thank you, Quentin. Now, another question I'd like to ask, and I'll open this to anyone. What other means are used to make the public aware of this environmental case and issue? I think we've touched on it a little, but would anyone like to elaborate on that? Ellen?
My organization that I preside over, the Friends of the Alewife Reservation, we try to bring in Arlington, Belmont, and Cambridge volunteers. And we've done as much as we possibly can. We love the place. We're out there a lot. We take educational tours. We do cleanups for the last 6 years. But we're having a big concert coming up with world-renowned musicians at the Arlington Street Church on February 4th. We try to partner with others to do things. We have a camp in particular, and this is good for, it's only for Cambridge youth. So. But the camp brings out 15 kids every single year from the mayor's summer youth program. So that is kind of exciting because people learn from all the wildlife, and it's right on a T-stop. We're right on the end of the Alewife T-stop. Mm-hmm. So we try to do many activities. We have forums. We had a wonderful flooding forum in Belmont. We had Belmont people and the head of the Mystic River Watershed Association. And people like Quentin and Edith spoke and were sponsors of it. So we really, once the public feels that it's theirs, I think that that's the future of this whole area, is public ownership of what is already owned by the Department of Conservation Secretary. But it gives us opportunity to do what we want, bring our neighbors, enjoy hiking, recreation, mm-hmm. just have a wonderful time, mm-hmm. and protect and conserve and be part of the climate protection future. This is an area that is Quentin can speak more about those other matters.
Mm-hmm. Well, we do many things to publicize this issue, including advertising it on our websites, on Facebook. I had the opportunity this summer to take my daughter to this area personally and have her enjoy the wilderness and really experience it for herself. I think that's by far the most important thing that anyone can do to familiarize themselves with this issue, is to actually go to the place and be there and understand it.
It's very pretty because you have a lot. You're walking in the woods, but you also have a view of the river and you have a view of the pond, and so it's a very nice. It's a special kind of scenic, and you can see deer when you're walking. Everybody says they have the deer sighting, so it's a very special area just for people to enjoy.
I'm holding up, Jack, this book that the Friends did. After many years, we received a grant from the state Fish and Wildlife to do a wildlife assessment, and so we have wildlife as well as vegetation, and so we have even bees and insects in here. But this was done by a professional, and it's a book that has all of the wildlife, when it was found, whether it was male, female, where it was seen, and a map to show exactly where it was. So we have 90 species of birds and 20 species of mammals. I think I mentioned a few of them, but it's a book. This is our second edition of it, and we take groups out there as well. So.
Excuse me, can you tell us how people could get a copy of that, or maybe
Well, our website, friendsofourwifereservation.org.
Okay,
They can and just send. It's a $10.
That's wonderful. I must say that I have lived in Belmont for 6 years now, and yesterday was the first time that I've been to this area, to the silver maple forest. I did not know about it, and I'm a birder, so I'm familiar with the habitat and the Audubon Society, and so obviously within Belmont there are a great number of people who are birders. So does anybody know about the number of birds or that might be seen there? And it was a lovely spot. And I only stopped at the parking lot, and so I didn't walk in some of the paths, and I actually wasn't aware of how to get to them. So I know you've talked about that a bit, Idit.
Yeah,
so if you could address that.
I think that it's about 45 bird species, if I remember correctly, according to our wildlife experts, which testified at the hearings.
Yeah, our wildlife experts that Friends of Our Life Reservation got are all in here, and you've got 90 species, 45 of which are nesting. And I'd really like to give you the book. If you're a birder, I'd like to give you that as a thank you for hosting
Moderating
this
has
today.
its benefits.
Yeah,
So-
and it has all of them and where they were received and where they were seen.
I'm a birder myself, Jack, and when I went out there this summer with my daughter, she was initially a little resistant. Why do we want to go to this weird place? What's there to do? It's going to be boring. And we walked in, and it was this cacophony of bird song, and she immediately got captivated